Jonathan Goodman here. I am back with Ren, with Amber, and we had a really good start to the podcast just a few minutes ago for the first time ever, and then I froze because my internet cut out. So here we are again, the one time that I thought that we started the podcast well, the world conspired against us. Today, I want to tell you a story about how Google invests over $3 billion a year into an innovations lab that they call X. And X is devoted to solving impossible problems. It's guided by a philosophy called monkeys and pedestals. I'll get into what X does in a second. First, a little bit of context. A business is nothing more than an unproven idea before it makes its first sale. You gotta do the first step before the second. A lot more people fail because they don't have enough sales than go under from a lack of a logo. Well wishes and intentions don't matter. Actions matter. And that's why you need to beware of false progress. Dr. Astro Teller, which is the best name ever, he's the leader of X. So he's the head of it. And he uses the example of trying to get a monkey to recite Shakespeare. But the problem that I have with that example is it's not funny enough of a mental image for me. So I decided to change it for our purposes to a monkey juggling flaming sticks. So imagine you're trying to teach a monkey to juggle fire as part of a performance. There's two jobs. The first job is to teach the monkey to juggle fire, and the second job is to build the pedestal for it to stand on. Now here's my question for you. Where do you begin? Because many people would start with the pedestal because it feels like progress, doesn't it? You know it'll cost money, you know that it's going to take time, but you also know that you can build it. Teller says that's the worst possible choice. You can always build the pedestal. All of the risk and learning comes with the extremely hard work of first training the monkey. Because a pedestal is useless if the monkey isn't juggling fire. Who wants to watch a monkey aflame on stage anyway because some asshole human made it throw flaming sticks in the air? Your business has lots of pedestals, but it only has one monkey. Here's some pedestal tasks. Setting up a legal corporation, designing a logo, creating content, buying the best mic or software or camera, building a website, writing down future ideas. Here's the only monkey task. Selling. Things like forming a legal corporation and getting a logo, it might be hard, it might be time intensive, it might be expensive, but you know that you can do them, right? But then there's sales. Does anybody actually want your thing? Will they pay for it? Are you selling the promise of a better future appropriately in a way that has value? Because if they don't, none of the other stuff matters. And that's why we use the hashtag monkey first. Monkey first. Always train your monkey first. That's what she said.
Just waiting on it.
Took us 5.5 minutes today.
I was just so sure it was about to happen. Thank you for not letting me down, John.
We usually warm up a little bit more.
Oh, right to
premature.
it.
Yeah. Was it premature? Yeah.
Thank you, Amber. Just counting on you.
It's hard to get straight to it the way that we did, but
You really got it in there, though.
Oh, jeez.
in a 2008 talk for the startup incubator Y Combinator, Jeff Bezos, I'm almost done the Walter Isaacson biography of Elon Musk right now. If you don't know Isaacson, he's like one of the best biographers, and he just came out with the Musk one. And I don't know if I'd recommend it. I mean, if you're like a geek for the stuff, then sure, but it's been interesting to read. I've definitely skimmed some parts because I don't really care about the spaceship stuff as much. But the whole Twitter thing was just hilarious. But one of the things when Musk always like makes fun of Bezos and Gates on Twitter, and he spells Jeff Bezos' name wrong on purpose, and he spells it Bezos like kisses in Spanish, which I think is funny. Anyway, 2008 talk for Y Combinator. Bezos said, one way to look at the future is to find One way to look at the future of something is to find an analog from the past. Then what Bezos did is he described. I'm fucking butchering this story, man.
That's right.
He then described his experience touring a 300-year-old brewery. Okay, so according to Bezos, electricity began helping beer makers about 100 years ago. At that time, there was no power grid. The only way for them to get power was to set up their own generator and become an expert in electric power generation. The important thing to notice here is that the fact that they generated their own electric power did not make their beer taste better, said Bezos. We tell ourselves that we're optimizing for scale and efficiency when chasing the latest tech. Productive procrastination is what's really happening. Undifferentiated heavy lifting doesn't improve your product. It gets in the way. Life's busy. Priorities compete with one another. With so much to do, attentions, thoughts, and efforts become diffused and we become distracted. The first step must become before the second. You need to start in order to start. If you don't have a deadline, manufacture one. Thomas Edison deliberately told the press about a launch date for a new invention that wasn't yet ready. He would create excitement and generate publicity for an invention before the invention existed. This way, if he delayed or dropped the ball, his reputation would suffer. According to Robert Greene in his book Mastery, his mind would spark into high gear, and he would make it happen. You see, when you have an obligation to others, you stop planning and you start doing. You never know just how much you can get done until getting it done is your only choice. When? That's me playing off of a Bob Marley quote.
Oh, is it?
You never know how strong you are until being strong is your only choice.
That's very nice, John. You've done well in this section, John.
Can your monkey juggle fire? If not, stop wasting your time and money on pedestals. I'm not comfortable today. I don't know why. I keep shifting around.
You're just a little, your body movement's just a little agitated, John.
It's a little bit, you know why, man? I'm sore, dude.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't going to work out. Well, I wasn't going to work out this morning. I was going to take a day off. And I really needed a day off. Like I'm sore, body kind of stiff and tired. That's what happens when you're 38 years old.
I was about to say.
Yeah. Amber, you don't know this yet. You won't know this for another 15 years. But
yeah. It's about time to slow down, buddy. Like,
our ages range from 20 to 50s 50 on this podcast.
I'll be 50, but I feel 50 already.
Well, it's funny. So Allison worked out this morning. She went to the 7 a.m., which is what I usually do. And I, looked after the kids in the morning, and then she gets back like 8:15 or whatever. And we were going to run the kids to school together on our bikes, which we always do. But both her and the instructor and Dave send me a text message. And they were like, "We're doing bicep curls today, bro. You missed out. It's bro workout." I was like, I've been going to this CrossFit gym for 8 months. This is the second time he's let me do a bicep curl. And I'm missing it? So it's 8:32 when he sent me that text message. I was like, fine. I'll be there for 9. See you soon. So Allison and I switched and I went to the gym and I ended up doing the workout this morning. So I'm stiff. I think that's why I'm moving around so much. This chapter is about not getting ahead of yourself. Mm-hmm. First, I want to tell a couple stories about people being happy that their work gets stolen. And from there, a shockingly effective way to launch a product or service, whether it's new or not. Shockingly. Shockingly.
I'm ready to be shocked, John.
The beer tastes better story was a pretty good one, right?
It's pretty good.
I was happy about that. I was happy when I found out.
I mean, you've got a good pace here. Like there was a challenging part there maybe 2 months ago where you seem to be in the weeds of creative, stress. But once you got momentum, man.
I feel like any major project, like writing a book is a particularly difficult creative project because it's so much work almost in isolation for such a long period of time that the release of the book is just so far away and such a ridiculous concept to even think that I'm ever going to get there. Right. That when you're in it, it's just like, why am I doing this? Like what? And then the book comes out and you're like, why did I do that? And then 2 weeks later, you're like, I'm going to do it again. but it's, I mean, my buddy Michael Easter told me in a therapy session over a text message a couple weeks back. He says, if you're not having at least 3 mental breakdowns over the course of writing a book, you're not doing it right. And so I successfully made it through one. I think I had a mini one a couple weeks ago. I'm just kind of ranging from like existential crisis to not, I believe. But I do feel like I have a good flow with it now. And I skipped ahead a couple chapters because there were a couple chapters that I wasn't quite sure on and felt like they were a little bit light. I didn't quite know exactly what was going to go in there. And I skipped ahead of them because I realized, like, one of the things that people always say, I mean, it's not just with writing, it's with any, I think, creative endeavor, where you always hear about writer's block. Mm-hmm. I don't think writer's block exists. I think that writer's block is simply a case of you not doing the background work that was necessary. It's a lack of research. It's a lack of preparedness. And so when I sat down to do one of those chapters, I was like, I am not prepared to write this chapter. I don't think it fits that well. I think I'm trying too hard to get it to fit into the theme. I think this is something that it was about choice architecture, effectively, how to make better choices. But like, how to make better choices for yourself doesn't really work into the theme of the obvious choice. It's like, it's why do other people choose you is important. But that's less about like why you should like how to order a beer in Greenland, you know, which is one of the stories that I tell. So I skipped ahead of that chapter and I was like, maybe I'll bring some of that stuff in other chapters, but that's why I feel like I'm flowing well. Cause I decided to start with the things that I know I really have it and then go back and fill in the gaps if I need to afterwards. And I don't think I'm actually going to need to, basically. But yeah, I mean, that beer story is a good one.
And we're back.
It makes so much sense. Well, it makes so much sense. So the other part of the story, I mean, why it happened is, you know, Amazon, some people know this, some people don't, but Amazon has something called Amazon Web Services. So Amazon actually powers a lot of the internet where their storage and whatever, they basically provide the background, and it's a prime example of a company turning one of their expenses into a major profit center. So Amazon had all these expenses for servers and server centers that they needed to do for themselves. And instead of looking at it as an expense, they said, hey, what if we offer this to other companies so they don't have to build their own? And there's been lots of examples of companies that have tried to do that. Most have failed, but Amazon Web Services is like the most profitable business ever. Like it's why Amazon exists. But Bezos went on this tour in like 2007, 2008, where he spoke to all these companies trying to get them to port over their servers to Amazon Web Services. And so this talk to Y Combinator was actually him selling Amazon Web Services to all of the startups. And it was brilliant that he used that story of visiting the brewery, of course. And that story, and the other part of it that I didn't include because it doesn't work with my narrative, but worked obviously with his, was that he, you know, so we visited these breweries and we actually did research to try to figure out which one. It was one of like 3 basically, but we couldn't figure out which one. It doesn't really matter. But he visited this brewery. And as the story goes, the way that he told it is that some companies, some breweries back in Luxembourg or wherever, decided to buy power, decided to do things manually, continually, until they could buy power off of the grid. Other companies decided to become much more efficient in making their beer by building their own power generators, which of course forced them to, like I said, become an expert in generating power. The ones at the beginning actually who stuck doing it manually did much better by not being that early adopter trying to jump at that efficiency, because they focused on what was really important, which is how do we make our beer taste better and how do we sell our beer to more people? Whereas the other ones, because this new tech was available and it seemed like they had to adopt it, spent a lot more time and effort and energy on undifferentiated heavy lifting, learning a new skill set that actually didn't impact their business in any measurable way. And then by the time that you kind of had to have that increased efficiency, there was a power grid. And so Bezos tells the story basically to encourage people to sign up for AWS and not try to build their own server centers, saying what matters to your company is for you to make your beer taste better. Like, let us do the undifferentiated heavy lifting. And I think there's a lot of parallels to what we do. I mean, you guys see that. God, Amber, you see that all the time with our students, the Online Trainer Academy, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, like what happens there?
I mean, buying all of the courses in order to what they think is get a competitive edge, where they like, let me add more letters after my name, CPT, and all of this other stuff. Like, they don't know the difference. They don't care.
Right.
But it makes
like to a client.
Better.
Like a client doesn't care.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I always find that so interesting. There was a post in our group today in the Online Trainer Academy student alumni group today, and it asked about a different certification. You know, this company's having a sale. Company always has sales, but like this company's having a sale. Has anybody taken it? And I was actually surprised at how 4 years ago it would have been outrageously positive towards this company, and I was actually surprised at how many not negative, but like, I wouldn't really recommend it. Doesn't really help sentiments there were. But what was overwhelmingly true and what was told over and over again in our group, which I agree with, is it's interesting, it's good information, but it ain't going to help you much.
Right.
And it ain't going to help your clients much. And so I think that that's very important, that divide of, we're talking about education, not technology here, but are you learning something because you are interested in that thing personally? Versus are you learning something because it's professional education to actually push your career forward? Mm-hmm. And I think that there's very much a time and a place for both, but I think it's very important to put whatever you're doing at any given time in the right bucket and not pretend it's one thing versus another thing.
Yep.
Early on, especially, we see people just trying to educate themselves out of imposter syndrome, right?
Ooh, that's good.
Instead of doing what actually reduces imposter syndrome, building a case history of success working with other humans. And that happens a lot.
I almost feel like we need like a special asterisk in the book that's just like, it's just like a little drawing of like Ren's face or something with like a thumbs up. And it's just a little super text, that the small text that goes above a word. Mm-hmm. I feel like we need one of those that specifically at the end of the book, it's like, this line came from Ren on the podcast.
It'll be awesome.
Need a Renism.
Yeah. This is awesome way to remember this podcast after I'm fired.
Yeah. Not going to happen though. I'm just going to take credit. But
that's what we signed up for.
Yeah.
I knew that going in.
But educate yourself out of imposter syndrome. But we see it, man. We see it with everything. I mean, there's a number of groups of personal trainers that I'm in. And you hear it all the time. Like, the business that I want to be in is I want to be in the business of selling like mics and cameras and shit. Because the amount of people who buy those types of things without really knowing how to use them or what they're going to use them for, and then they just sit around. But everybody seems to buy them new. Very few people buy them used. These companies must be just killing it. Everybody who thinks that they want to be a creator, and then they realize that the entire idea of being a creator is just really stupid for most people. But then they've bought all the gear because that's the first thing that they do when they feel like an imposter when they're new. Mm-hmm. And it's like the company who's selling them the handles and look at all the shit we have for this podcast. Like, how ridiculous is this? But I mean, I've spent thousands of dollars on equipment. You know how many things I spent thousands of dollars on? Like, not many. Definitely not many professionally. I buy a computer once every 8 years. I haven't bought a phone for, I think, 10 years. My wife finally got frustrated and gave me a new phone for my birthday because she's like, you put yourself on camera all the time. You've got this like Apple 7 or whatever it was.
It's giving me anxiety just thinking about it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the way that it is with the stuff. And so this idea of, hey, your logo isn't going to make your beer taste better.
Right.
Your camera isn't going to make your beer taste better. Those are all pedestals. Those are all things that you can improve, and it's very easy to hire somebody. You can hire somebody to come into your place and fix your audio and video setup for like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
What are you saying? What's your messaging? How good are you at actually communicating? Fix that first. Fix your product first. I know you want to say something, Amber. Let me just finish this thought, and I want to hear what you have to say. This idea in the book with Musk keeps coming back to it over and over and over again, is just how little he markets any of his companies. He had what was it? He owns $5 billion companies. Isn't that the most he owns like one of the most valuable companies in the world, Tesla, in addition to 4 other billion-dollar companies. Isn't that the most just fucking craziest thing you can ever imagine? And if you think about it, none of them market. Sure, they do a presentation a couple times a year. They probably have Twitter or Instagram accounts or whatever it is, but it doesn't really matter. And his opinion overwhelmingly is, when your product is as good as our products are, you don't need to market them. They market themselves. And I have seen that as well. Mm-hmm. Because I have not marketed for close to 3 years now. Not once. No paid ads. And I mean, I don't know, $5 billion companies, but I have 3 very good companies, and they're all doing as good or better than they've ever done, and feel like they have more momentum than they've ever had. So, like, what are you focusing on? All right, make your beer taste better first. Amber, what were you going to say?
I'll see if I can bring it back around. So I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about like being able to spot the pro. And if you go to a networking event, for example, and everyone's kind of dressed up, but then there's the 1 or 2 people like Mark Zuckerberg, whoever, who's dressed down, and there's more context to it, but being able to spot the pro that way, the people that feel like they have to put on a show are usually not the pros in that context. And so I'm wondering if this kind of works with that same theory that they were talking about, where you feel like you have to have the logo, you feel like you have to have all of these things to look like a pro. But I wonder if that same theory that they were talking about would apply here as well. As I don't know, but
I think that there's some, it is. Well, and I've seen the same thing. You know, I go to a lot of expensive business events and stuff, and it is 100%. I think I think part of it is overcompensation, for sure. But I also think that there's some Dunning-Kruger involved. When you're really an expert in something, you have this sort of quiet confidence about you, where it's an energetic thing. There's a book that I read a while back, and it was, oh God, David Drayle, The Book of Charlie, I believe it was, and it's like wisdom from a 100-year-old man. Here. And it's The Book of Charlie, Wisdom from the Remarkable American Life of a 109-year-old Man. And it was a very good book. It was a very interesting book. But there's a quote that I took from it, and I'll find it for you. It was about competence. And here's the book. I love the Kindle Notes app. And he says, competence breeds confidence. It is an antidote to the feeling that change is a hostile force sweeping the world along, helpless in its current. That was immediately when I thought about when I heard when you said that, Amber, and also when I've witnessed that same type of thing. There's a quiet confidence amongst people who are truly competent that you can feel. I think they don't need to rush. They don't need to, hey, what's going on, everybody? Hey, let me get your attention, and pull it away from you. And I think it takes some time to realize that because there's so much jumping out at us in our face, especially with short form videos and things where, you know, everybody who teaches these things is like a 23-year-old who doesn't know shit about fuck. And they're talking about, you know, comparing your thumbnails and how to get the most attention. It's like, yeah, fine, you're getting attention, but like you ain't Mr. Beast. And so like, who cares really if you get more views? You know, what does that mean? Really, nobody thinks that you're an expert about something just because you can shout about it and get attention around that thing. And there might be some that jump above, but most don't. But then you see others. Robert Greene is a good example of this. Robert Greene wrote 48 Laws of Power, Mastery, Laws of Human Nature, amongst others. And he's built up a massive content platform now. Largely, I think Ryan Holiday has been helping him and pushing him forward and stuff. But he has his own, I mean, huge YouTube channel, huge platforms. And he's like I think he's in his late 70s. Quieter. He's kind of like a come to me and I will share my wisdom with you type speaker. But there's so much competence there. You can feel it. There's so much wisdom there. You can feel it. And as a result, he's the type of person I think that you want to learn from. So I think that's what I think about when I see those things, Amber. I mean, that is a very distinct phenomenon. If somebody's trying really hard to impress you, they're probably not the first choice that you should go to work with, just because you see them first, or just because they get your attention first. They're not the person. I mean, this goes back into self-worth and perceived self-worth. I always joke about it and I say the dude popping bottles at the club is not the dude who can afford to pop bottles at the club. We don't brag. I mean, check in with yourself here as I say this. We don't brag about things that we're confident about. The only reason that we brag about things is because we crave the self-worth. We crave the social support for that thing because we're missing that confidence in that thing ourselves. So check in with yourself next time you're talking to somebody, and if you like feel like you have to over justify something, or if you tell somebody that you have whatever more of something than you actually do in a conversation, like check in with yourself and say, like, why am I doing this? Because I do that. I check in with myself. Anyway,
it's exactly what I think. All this reminds me so much of talking to our students about sales and the part of the enrollment process where they pitch what they do. This perfectly summed it all up for me. And it's what I talk about all the time. If you're talking too much about what your offer is, they're going to see through it. Like that's prime example that you don't feel really confident about your ability to serve this potential client. And I love what you just said.
One thing that I think anybody who does sales, like particularly phone sales or like in-person sales, one thing that people find once they become experienced is that the less that they say, the more that they sell.
100%. 100%.
Okay, and we'll move on here. So in his book Unlabel, the fashion designer Mark Echo, which if you're ever looking for a good book, it's a really interesting book to read. Unlabel, yeah, it was surprisingly good. I mean, it talked about Echo Unlimited and stuff, but all this fun shit that he did along the way, like how do you build a fashion brand like that? You've kind of walked the edge a lot. So he would do things like he wrote physical checks for his invoices, and they would purposefully smudge. They would purposefully smudge the numbers on the check so that the person couldn't auto deposit them, because they knew if the person had to deposit them and the bank had to manually check it, it gave them extra 30 days for the check to clear. He would do stuff like that, right? So anyway, it's fun. So, but he talks about a walk that he took through, I might not pronounce this right, Tung Choi Street, which is in Hong Kong. And it's an area referred to as Women's Street that's infamous for selling things like fakes and knockoffs. And he was with an executive from Timex, the enemy, if you're a Casio fan. But he was with an executive from Timex at the time. And he saw his brand, Echo Unlimited, knocked off. And it was sold illegally. And he complained to his colleague. And this woman said, Mark, you will get a lot angrier when you don't see any fake Echo here. Don't be worried that they might steal from you. Be upset that they aren't doing it already. Mm-hmm. Paulo Coelho sold over 210 million copies of his books. He's a master storyteller, he's a master marketer, and he's an active supporter of piracy over his own work. In 2012, he called on the pirates of the world to unite and pirate everything that he's ever written. He teamed up with the file-sharing website Pirate Bay to allow users to illegally download every single one of his books. On March 13th, 2015, he used his Facebook page to thank a teenager in Delhi for selling illegally printed copies of his book, calling it the smallest bookstore in the world. His post had 44.2 thousand likes and 2.7 thousand shares. The more often we hear a song on the radio, the keener we are to buy the CD. It's the same with literature. The more people pirate a book, the better. If they like the beginning, they'll buy the whole book the next day, wrote Coelho. We have a family friend who was working on a secret project, and she wouldn't share with us, she wouldn't share with anybody else, what it was for fear her idea would be stolen. 3 years later, she quietly released a self-published textbook. Having the idea for an ambitious project like a textbook is pretty easy. Executing it is hard. I speak from experience because I've done it. Sadly, her project failed. She was so scared of her idea being stolen that I never knew what she was working on, and I couldn't help her until it was too late. I don't think that there are many people in the world in any industry that would have been better positioned to help her with a project, self-publishing a textbook. I don't know many people who have self-published a textbook and generated tens of millions of dollars of revenue from that textbook. From nothing, right? From nothing. I never forget, I think I've told the story before, the message that John Berardi sent me when I first sent him a copy of the textbook. It was like a day after he got it. He couldn't have read it. And he just sent me a text message. He sent me it was an email, I think it was. And he says, congratulations, man. This is really cool. If it wasn't for you, those pages would be empty. There's no publisher involved. Nobody funded it. No nothing, right? But I couldn't help her because she was scared that her idea would be stolen. It's really sad. I'll never forget a conversation from early on in my journey where I'd started my website and I called an old colleague, Carolina, not the Carolina that we know, different Carolina, for business advice. Carolina Stolier is her name. And to be honest, I don't actually remember what the idea was, but at one point I remember saying something like, nobody's doing this, so I don't want to share it yet. And she interrupted me. And in her heavy Argentinian accent, she said, John, I will stop you. If it is true that nobody is already doing your idea right now, it is because it is a shit idea.
100%.
Sure it's
I
not
would
the
have
same?
gone on Canva and made that a poster.
That's awesome.
It does sound like our Carolina as well.
Yeah, it sounds like shockingly like the same Carolina.
Something about
Carolina's
fiery Latina women. I mean, I don't know what it is, man. Carolina's a really beautiful woman, and she was the manager at Body and Soul when I first went there. She's married, kids. She's wonderful. I saw her a couple years ago, actually. We caught up. But really beautiful, and this is and so I was, like 21, 22 years old, right? She was my manager, and I was driving her home one day, or driving her at the subway one day or something. And I remember I put on music that I really liked. And I really liked this band called the John Butler Trio. It's this Australian band, a lot of acoustic guitar, kind of folk. And I got into them when I lived in Australia doing a student exchange there at the time. And so I put on John Butler Trio just in the car. And the song that came on just goes, beautiful woman, so sexy. and I'm like 22. She's like probably like 34 or so at this point. And I did not have a thing for her, but like she's my manager. She's a lot older. Like it wasn't even anything that I was thinking. Like it wasn't on purpose, but it was just one of those where I was just like going through my head was so clearly like, I'm gonna do it, man. Now's the time. Now's the time. She's not fighting this. Come on. I still remember that. Every time I hear that song, I just laugh at that cover. Beautiful woman.
Nice job.
So anyway, Caroline's great. I mean, it was nothing obviously ever happened with her. Nothing ever started with her. There was none of that. It was very professional, but it was just a really funny moment. But she's just really, really smart business mind. But she's right. If it's true that nobody has ever done it before, it's a shit idea. Most likely, people have done it, and it hasn't worked.
Right.
Which means one of two things. Number one, it's a shit idea.
Right.
Or number two, they didn't execute on it well. Nothing that you are thinking that's magical right now is unique and something that somebody else hasn't thought about. It's just not. We're too modern of a world. There's too many people who are thinking about new creative endeavors. Like, unless you're some leading robotics engineer or something and you're at the forefront of like technology, I mean, like Kurzweil, Boston Dynamics, like, cool, thanks for listening to this podcast, I appreciate it. But like everybody else,
this just takes me right back to our students, John, because you'll give them a great template to follow, a great track. Yeah. Historically proven over the last 5, 6, 8 years, and undoubtedly they'll cut that screen will pop up on Zoom. Ren, here's what I was thinking. Instead of me doing a founding client challenge, I'm going to shave my name into dogs' asses, and I'm going to let the dogs loose in a local park where a lot of fat people are. And then I'm going to wait, how did you even conceptualize this? Like, why are you trying to rewrite this? Like, don't make it so hard.
I'm gonna stop you. Taylor, I'm gonna let you finish. But
I'm gonna let you finish.
Taylor, I'm gonna let you finish.
Yeah,
but that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's an incredible idea. And it's at the point now where I'm like, I fully support you. In addition to that, you could also do this. So maybe we run across both of those tracks, right? Yeah. Maybe you figured out something that none of us in the history of training have ever figured out. Man, what a revolutionary idea this might be. Also, let's not do that. So that's kind of, people just...
There was a prank done by the engineering students when I was in first year university. I went to the University of Western Ontario. And they let loose 2 pigs on campus. And they put numbers on them. Number 1 and number 3.
That's a very common practical joke for kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
It's funny because we see this.
Speaking of, go on.
With like users, right? Where they're like, okay, well, I want to delete a client, or they're inactive. So in Quick Coach, right? And they're like, well, I don't want them to have access to their plans. Or what if they share the plans with a friend? Like,
right.
Good. Good.
Dude, nobody cares.
Fantastic news. That's not bad. There's nothing.
That's really, what you
you're
want.
Good at what
you would, if they're not doing
that's
that.
The problem. Exactly. And you're great at what you do, but there's nothing unique about what you do. Right. So like, that's not what that's not what they're buying is the programming. You helping them through it is what they're buying.
You gave that person 6 to 8 reps. Oh my God. For 3 sets. Oh my God. With a 75-second break in between every set. Oh my God. Damn, man. How did you think of that? Holy shit. And then they're skipping? You, sir, have solved the fitness world. You, sir. You You have done it.
You
Shave your name into a dog's ass. Let it out in the parking lot. Let's do this.
Oh man, it's so incredible how important we perceive ourselves to be.
Yes.
We're just not that important.
No.
I hate to break it to you. Somebody else did it already.
No. Somebody else did.
Oh my gosh.
And it was probably The Simpsons. The Simpsons have done everything. Remember when they predicted the Trump presidency? Okay, we're not going there. Showing up to the bar is scary, isn't it? It takes guts to wear nice clothes and put yourself out there in the hopes that you might meet someone special. And yet, showing up to the bar simply isn't enough. Standing on the dance floor, nervously shuffling your feet, maintaining eye contact with nobody in particular, and searching for that stupid tiny straw, bobbing in your raspberry vodka, hoping it finds your mouth, damn it, wishing somebody would invite you to dance, rarely results in success. I just want to stop for a second because I really like the pacing of that passage. Good, moving on.
It's very good, man.
Hoping it finds your mouth, damn it. Wishing. If you want to dance, simply showing up to the bar is not enough. Putting on your cleanest pair of Pumas and standing at the edge of the dance floor is not enough. Don't ever assume people know you in business or how to do business with you. In our heads, it's clear. In our world, it's obvious. We've already made the ask. We're at the bar. Of course we want to dance. Why isn't anyone asking me? Look at my feet. I'm wearing my dancing shoes, for fuck's sakes.
Pumas.
I have a logo and content, but there's a link in my bio.
Oh.
The horror.
The problem is that other people don't live in your world. They live in theirs. And they're also standing on the edge of the dance floor wondering why nobody is asking them to get jiggy with it. No.
Shut up.
No. Shit, I think we have to pay them for that now.
Probably.
Take that out. Amber, take that out. Will, if you're listening to this, just ignore that.
Yeah.
In your mind, we had a Will Smith reference and a Kanye West Taylor Swift reference. I feel like we just referenced like the two best celebrity encounters on stage at award ceremonies.
Probably so. We're basically E-television now, John. Good job.
Just call me TMZ.
Yeah, we crossed over.
In your mind, though, in your mind, putting up your social media profile or iterating on your logo should make it clear that you're in business. But everybody else is doing the same thing. So while it's clear to you, others simply don't notice. If you want something, talk to a human and ask for it. And you will get rejected sometimes. It'll suck. But the person who gets rejected the most is also the person who's most likely to find a dancing partner. At the end of the day, getting rejected and not asking have the same result. So here's advice from an awkward white guy who has an uncanny ability to dance the precise opposite of whatever beat is playing. You might as well ask. Damn it.
Dancing on the unbeat.
No. Allison and I try to do that sometimes when we're at weddings or something. We'll just try to dance the exact opposite of the beat. She can do it because she's like really good at stuff like that.
Right.
And I just look even worse than I normally do on the dance floor. But one thing that I've noticed is that if you smile, nobody knows you're screwing up. That's with dancing, but also a metaphor for life. And honestly, the key to impressing girls at bar mitzvahs is to smile on the dance floor. So there you go.
I've always used that at all the bar mitzvahs I've been invited to, John. I can tell you.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of bar mitzvahs in North Carolina.
I clean up. I clean up at the bar mitzvahs. I'm bar mitzvah bay. You don't know that, but I am.
Bar mitzvah bay.
Ren Jones.
B-A-E bay. Yeah.
Bar mitzvah bay.
Ren Jones. Bar mitzvah bay.
I'm a
you
hit
should MC bar mitzvahs as MC Tuck Tuck. And
there'll probably be one in North Carolina this year.
So the last episode that went live, we talked about the Finding Client Challenge, and I recommend that you check that one out for sure if you haven't yet. It very much goes into this theme. where yeah, like here's how you start before you're ready. And the reason that the Founding Client Challenge is so effective is because it's a permission launch. So the idea with permission launch though is basically you're asking for advice. You're not asking for business. And the Founding Client Challenge episode, where I think it's like how to get 5 new clients this week, I think is what we're going to title it, Amber, something like that. But let's go back if you want the full process. I want to talk a little bit about permission launches, and specifically actually about how I used a permission launch to launch QuickCoach, to launch our free software, which if you want to check that out, it's www.quickcoach.fit, F-I-T. Permission launches are a wonderful way to launch any new idea, even for established companies. So it doesn't just have to be getting clients or whatever it is. It's just like the best way to launch anything, basically. In 2022, I was preparing to release this software platform called QuickCoach for fitness nutrition coaches to build and deliver plans for their clients. And the platform's amazing. I mean, we have like 36,000 users now. So like clearly it's amazing with that many users without any marketing. Clearly people love it and talk to other people about it, which is wonderful. The problem is that nobody wants more software. You didn't wake up this morning and you're like, wow, I really hope somebody tells me to buy software today. This is going to make my day. You're like, ah, shit, I've been thinking about signing up for QuickCoach for so long. John keeps talking about it. I keep hearing about how great it is. But goddamn, I don't want to learn how to use something new. I knew that once people tried it, they'd love it. But getting them to try it was the challenge. During his rise to power, the founding father, Benjamin Franklin, I think I told this a little bit, but I'll actually read the passage from his book. Founding father Benjamin Franklin would ask to borrow books from influential men. What he correctly identified is that humans have a bias for consistency. A small favor leads to future favors. So here's what he said straight from his autobiography, actually, describing how he turned an enemy into a supporter by borrowing a book. This is like funny old fogey English, so I especially like it. Having heard that he had in his library a certain very scarce and curious book, I wrote a note to him expressing my desire of perusing that book and requesting he would do me the favor of lending it to me for a few days. He sent it immediately, and I returned it in about a week with another note expressing strongly my sense of the favor. When we next met in the house, he spoke to me, which he had never done before, and with great civility, and he ever after manifested a readiness to serve me on all occasions, so that we became great friends, and our friendship continued to his death. This is another instance of the truth of an old maxim I had learned, which says, he that has once done you a kindness will be more ready to do you another than he whom you yourself have obliged. These old books can be hard to read, but there's a lot of wisdom in it.
It's wordy.
Well, it's wordy and it's all like past tense and weirdly written. Right?
I love it.
But you get the idea. So once we had a working prototype, I made a list of 60 colleagues and asked if they'd do me a favor and chat on the phone. Now notice the nuance there. I asked if they would do me a favor and chat on the phone. And here's basically what I said. I'm building something special, and it'd be really helpful if I could ask you some questions about how you build and deliver your programs to your clients, I said. Of those 60 outreach, I did about 40 short calls, and I focused on their process and frustrations with it. And what was interesting was that they were all different, right? Some of them used software, most of them didn't. At the end, all that I did is I shared a pre-prepared, basically like 30-second description of what I was building. And I asked them if we could schedule another call for feedback on the prototype after I incorporated what I learned from the conversation. A few of them said, I like you, dude, but doesn't sound like something that I'm interested in. Like, I'm pretty happy with my process. But 35, even if they did something else, 35 were excited for a tour of the prototype. Just like interested in like new stuff, especially new stuff that people that we know are putting out. When the launch day came, these colleagues felt some ownership of what we created, and a lot of them told friends and shared the promotional video. As a result, the video got about 100,000 views in 24 hours, and we had 5,000 users on day one. The sooner you sell, the faster you figure out what you actually have. Until you make a sale, everything is a guess. Perhaps educated, but a guess nonetheless. The first step is to make a sale. Build your pedestals later. And then I introduced the next chapter, so we'll get into that. Yeah? What do you think?
I love the phrase, the sooner you sell. The sooner you sell. The sooner you sell.
Yeah.
Like, if I could just beat that drum consistently every single time I get an opportunity to talk to a student, you just can't figure anything out until you do something.
You don't know anything. Well, and the interesting thing is that once you have somebody who's paid you expecting it, you're going to figure it out quick. And you're not going to get it right necessarily right off the bat, but you wouldn't otherwise anyway. But you're going to be forced to fail faster and fail forward faster. And as a result, you'll figure it out more. And that's the key. I mean, I agree with you. And whenever I see anybody post in a Facebook group, or if anybody asks me, they're like, hey, I've been thinking about doing this online training thing, or I've been thinking of doing this thing for a long time. Whatever the thing is, what do you think are my first steps? I'm like, get a client, get a customer. What? But like, don't I need to have this? Get a customer. What about insurance? What about this? Get a customer. That's it. Get a customer. Get somebody to pay you for it. If you can't get somebody to pay you for your thing based off of the idea, based off of what they will become as a result of it, based off of the transformation that your thing, your product, your service helps them, you're not going to be able to sell it when that thing exists in the real world anyway. You have to learn how to sell it based off of the idea. And if you can't do that, you don't have a good enough idea. Or you don't know how to communicate your idea well enough. And then once you actually sell it, you've got a little bit of money, so that's good. You got a little bit of momentum. But like, you're going to get something out there. And a bad plan executed quickly leads to mistakes, leads to iterations, leads to innovations. And a bad plan is way better than no plan, but sometimes we need that manufactured accountability in order to force us to take action on that bad plan. I think that's the pod. What do you think?
Good job, John.
Yeah. Let's recommend another episode 117 for you to check out right now if you want to listen to something. This relates, Ren. Don't give me that shrug shoulders. This relates. Yeah, episode 117. The title of it is How to Ask for Things from People You Admire. So I put out this where I shared the playbook. I put on, the Obvious Choice Digital Summit a couple months ago, and I had to ask a lot of people who I admired. Some of them I didn't know at all. Some of them I only knew very, very loosely. I had to ask them for an hour of their time, which is a big ask. And I share my playbook for exactly how I asked there. And yes, I share exactly what the message was that I sent, the email that I sent was. And that might be what you're interested in, and you will get that. But what you'll also find when you listen to that episode 117, is that actually the message that you send doesn't matter as much as what you do before you send the message. And so that's episode 117. Have a listen. Hope that you enjoy it. And as always, thank you for listening. Hope you're good. I kind of want a fun sign off. Hope you have a stellar day. Shit, that was bad. We'll try next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, bye.